Okay, I think we are live now. Um, Wendy, can you confirm? Are we live now?
Yes, go ahead.
Gotcha. Thank you. So welcome anyone and everyone who is watching on YouTube on the City of Johnson City's YouTube channel. This is a neighborhood meeting for a proposed rezoning um, in the 600 and 700 block of East Maple Street, uh, near Local Motion Bike Shop and the Tweetsy Trail Trailhead. My name is Preston Mitchell, and I'm the Director of Development Services, which is essentially your planning department. Also on the call there, you will see is Miss Whitney Hodges. She's a planning consultant working with the City of Johnson City. Um, she and I both are working directly with the Planning Commission as we will present this item to the Planning Commission tomorrow evening, and then ultimately to the City Commission, depending on the recommendation of the Planning Commission. Before we get into an in-depth description and any other information, I do want to ask Wendy if she is able to see whether or not we have folks viewing. Because if we don't have anyone viewing or anyone logging on, then typically the way we will treat neighborhood meetings is that we can give a brief description, information, but then if there's no active conversation, then we would call the meeting. But Wendy, do you have anybody viewing, or do you have anybody who is interested in calling in? Before we go through and do a presentation, would you want to see if there's anybody out there, see if anybody wants to call in? We're also still waiting on the property owner and the developer to call in.
I have no one waiting online. I'll share the screen that'll have the public information on it if you want to just go over this quick description and summary while we wait.
Sure, thanks. Okay, I see that you're sharing the call-in information. Um, are you able to see, Wendy, how many viewers we have, or is that usually post-meeting?
Well, right now there's none.
Okay. I will go through and give just a brief description in case anyone begins. Otherwise, we should be able to call this if we need to. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, no, I can't because you are sharing it. So I'll try to do this verbally here for just a minute. First of all, I think I'm obligated to say that we are authorized to have this neighborhood meeting virtually as opposed to here at City Hall or on the premises of the rezoning site, by virtue of the governor's executive order that is in place due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we are continuing to meet virtually in most capacities. The neighborhood meeting tonight, Planning Commission tomorrow, and then the City Commission continues to meet virtually as well. As stated, this is a request to rezone three different pieces of property: 640, 700, and 701 East Maple Street. Both 640 and 700 East Maple Street are on the I'll call it the southwest side or the hillside of East Maple Street. 640 is a dilapidated structure that appears to be a garage and maybe a little apartment above it that is built into the hill there at 640. It has been in front of the Board of Dwelling Standards and Review, the BDSR. late last year, scheduled to come back in front of the BDSR this month, as a matter of fact. Part of the conversation with the BDSR was that Mr. Winston, Brian Winston, property owner of the bike shop, he testified that he had purchased the property and was looking to either demolish and rebuild or rehab that structure into a new mixed use opportunity, something that would tie in with his bike shop. And then also at the time was looking at purchasing 700. Between that meeting back in October and today, Mr. Winston can confirm that he did buy 700 East Maple, which is the vacant lot to the left of 640. So he now owns both of those and has proposed a small scale mixed use development on a portion of those two lots. He is not proposing to use the upper portion of 700, which reaches all the way up to Taylor's Ridge. We've also encouraged Mr. Winston to include his bike shop in the rezoning, because right now the bike shop is currently zoned commercial, but it's zoned B3. It is a conforming use. All the other standards have been met because that is a fairly recent redevelopment that has occurred, or rehabilitation that's occurred on that site. But what we are asking is, since it's the same property owner for all three properties, that he consolidate the zoning into one zoning district for continuity purposes, and also creates a master plan out of his development, both the bike shop and then what he's looking to do at 640. So that said, I'm happy to share my screen and get into some maps and some other graphics, and have a conversation with the neighborhood. Anybody who desires to join the call, we'd be happy to engage them, answer any questions, help explain the city side of what zoning is and why the mixed use is being proposed. But ultimately, it's the responsibility of the developer to explain his or her plan, and that's why we had invited Mr. Winston to join us, so that they could explain their plans on the property and how they hope to improve the area.
We do have someone on the line if you want to take it now.
Okay, great.
Caller, can you identify yourself, please?
Brian Winston.
Okay, Brian, if you'll turn your volume down on the computer there so we don't have double sound. Thank you.
Let me try that. Yes.
Just respond to the phone.
Okay, I will do.
That's the only one we have in the waiting room, Mitchell. Preston.
That's all right. Thank you. Hey, Brian. This is Preston and Whitney Hodges on the call here. You may be able to see us if you've got YouTube pulled up. But I just gave a brief introduction to the rezoning,
Yes, sir.
to the properties that are involved, and your involvement. I don't believe we have anyone engaged in the meeting. Since you've called in, Wendy, can you see if anybody else is viewing on YouTube?
I have no one waiting.
Okay. And even though you don't have anybody waiting, do you have anybody viewing?
I have two viewing, and if one is Mr. Winston, then there's one other.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, that one alone gives us enough. So that's good. So what we will do is, Wendy, will you let me share my screen? Thank you. Okay, so Wendy, Whitney, I'm going to need for you to provide feedback. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to zoom in here. For some reason, the address numbers are not popping up, but for folks who are watching, if you can see my cursor, this parking lot right here along Legion Street at the corner of Legion and Alabama, this is the parking lot for the Tweetsie Trail Tweetsie Trail parking lot. It's the head of the Tweetsie Trail. That's what I was trying to say. Parking lot. And across the railroad tracks, across the Clinchfield tracks there, on the corner of Alabama and East Maple Street is Local Motion Cyclery. The property owner of Local Motion Cyclery is Brian Winston, who is on the call. He is the property owner and developer of the two properties across the street. So here is Local Motion. This is at 701 East Maple Street. And when you jump across the street, 640 East Maple Street, and then 700 East Maple is the long skinny one that's adjacent to 640. He has purchased both of these. These three parcels here are involved in the rezoning. And the proposal to rezone is two-part. The proposal is to change the zoning of the bike shop from B3 to MX1 or mixed use neighborhood, and then to change the zoning of 640 and 700 East Maple Street from R5. On this side of Maple Street, it is zoned R5. All of these properties, these properties over here next to the trailhead, you will see are zoned R4. Both of those zoning classifications are considered urban, higher density residential, do allow for single family and multifamily. But the proposal is to rezone these two properties to MX1 as well. So if rezoned, these three properties right here would be zoned mixed use neighborhood and would allow for the redevelopment of 640 and 700 in a way that is consistent with that mixed use district. At this time, the property owner is not proposing any changes from a development perspective to the bike shop. So I'm going to shift over to the master plan. Whitney, could you see me shift my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the master plan here. This is 640 East Maple, and then here is 700, which is the vacant piece. And then this is the bike shop across the street. So Brian, since you're on the call, will you take a minute, if you can see the screen, and provide some details, some background, some explanation of your proposal, why you're looking to do this, your interest in the area, and any other supporting information that you'd like to provide.
Sure. Thank you, Mitt. Thank you, Preston. My goal with this, since we opened up Local Motion Cyclery 2.5 years ago, was to for growth, not only business growth, but community growth. I feel as though this is a great opportunity to draw people into the Johnson City area. I know when cycling, I'm a cyclist. I know when cyclists get involved, it will have a destination point. They can get involved in growing the community. So with the two properties I purchased, this drew me to an idea of getting more. We have a lot of out of town people that we cater to that just happen to adventure in, and they're just looking for an activity to do, not only cycling, but also runners and walkers and people just going out for a stroll. The Tweetsie Trail has brought a great aspect. It's brought a great product to our community where it gives people in a safe environment to exercise and visit the outdoors. So for me, the one property in particular has been an issue from renters in the past, And when I had the opportunity to purchase it, I jumped on it. And for a business aspect, my goal here is to grow the cycling community. So with all that said, I feel as though it'll be a great add-on to our community for outdoors events and just getting more people involved in exercise for their fitness.
Okay, great. Thanks. Since the plan is on the screen, if you could, appreciate those introductory remarks. Spend a couple of minutes, if you would, on some specifics. Talk a little bit about what you'd like to do with the building there that's on 640 now, whether or not you're planning on demoing and rebuilding, or if it's a remod, what your plans are for those different floors. And what I can do in the meantime is, I think I have trying to get my screen here to behave. I'm going to pull up the Google map for everyone to be able to see. And I'm happy to toggle back and forth to the master plan. But if you would, Brian, tell us, oh, come on now.
There it goes.
Well, forgive me.
It does not want to cooperate.
Nope, there we go. All right, tell us a little bit about your what you'd like to do. I'm gonna back up here a little bit. Now, for the benefit of those who might be watching, again, this is 701 East Maple, which is the current bike shop. This is 640 East Maple. This is the dilapidated structure that went in front of the BDSR in October. And then this is 700 East Maple, the vacant lot to the left. So again, happy to toggle back and forth between this and your master plan, but tell us a little bit about your plans for 640 and 700.
Yes, I'm a general contractor first, and what I do, I have a background in taking structures, doing things, but with the existing structure, it's relatively small. It's only 26 by 18. And the floor system in it's very old, 2x6, not a large capacity load, safe construction. So my goal is to take the existing structure and just demolish it, excluding the foundation. Now, once I get into the demolishing, if the foundation is no good, I'll just tear that out as well. So with what I see is to take the existing wood structure, second floor, I'll call the street level, the basement level, and just tear it completely off. Being only 26 feet wide, 18 feet deep, I want to expand back into the property, approximately a total construction of 26 by 40. And with doing that, that first floor is going to be my primary retail space, and with that, I'll have on the first floor a whole assortment of things, apparel. I'm going to create an environment for people to come off or onto the trail to do what we're going to do is also on the property do a pump track, a kids pump track, a relatively small product. For kids to have a safe place, environment to just run around. And if people aren't familiar with a pump track, it's just basically circles, and it's up and down motions for bikes to be ridden on. I'm going to put a covered patio off to the left side of that old structure that you see there for people to come out and have shelter out of the sun. They can stand up there and watch their children ride bikes on the pump track. My other goal too is also to have frequent food trucks for access for people to come in and grab a bite to eat if they so choose. coming off the trail. My primary customer, I believe, is going to be people that are from the trail. I just don't think that that it's going to be a drive-to destination. But with that said, on the first floor, retail space again, sell bikes, sell apparel, sell product, have a tap room in there. I do want to offer adult beverages. But very limited, not a wide scale bar, nothing like that. And then eventually on the upper deck, it'll be a flat roof similar to what I constructed there in the old Johnston store. On the upper level, have a opportunity to have seating there as well, so people can be there as well and look down over onto the track or look back down towards the Tweetsie Trail. So it's just going to be a place for conversation. So ultimately, demolish that and start anew, if that helps.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. Thank you very much. So what I'll do is I'll just toggle back and forth to the master plan here. So based on the description you gave of the pump track, I'm going to zoom in here. I'm just going to walk forward a little bit here on Google. So I'm looking back to this is an old image, obviously, because that's before you, there we go. So here's the bike shop on the left. Here's the building that you described on the right, 640. And then based on what you described, this driveway right here that you can still see it, even though it's in pretty bad shape. It appears as though you're going to be still using that driveway to get up the hill, so to speak, and that the pump track would be up here on this upper portion. SoLl toggle back to the master plan. And so it looks like here's that driveway going up the hill, accessing 2 parking spaces, and then the pump track would be just right up from those 2 spaces. Looks like you've got seating and maybe a knee wall, some other things like that. One thing I did in preparation for today, I just, again, simple Google image or Google search, I went and looked for pump tracks, and you can find, this gives you an idea of what a pump track looks like. These are obviously much larger than what you've just described, but it's these kind of hills and turns and twists. I think that's the idea. If anybody's ever been up on top of Tannery Knobs and seen the new pump track up on top of Tannery Knobs, I think that's the concept. And I will let Brian speak to the scale of that. But that's what the pump track looks like, and it would be up in this general vicinity. Is that correct, Brian?
It is. Scale wise, much smaller.
Yeah.
This is for kids, for them to have fun and introduction into cycling and just so yes, much smaller. The driveway that you pointed out, yes, we'll be doing quite a bit of grading there and taking out some earth and maybe hopefully be able to utilize some of it, because I think that I'll have to heighten up that retaining wall that's there as well. But yeah, 2 parking spaces, pump track up there, relatively small, and yeah, you got it right.
Okay, good. So if we could, let's touch on a couple of things that we had discussed preliminarily, but a couple of items that have also come up during our conversations during plan review, and then even a couple of things that we've highlighted in our staff report that we just want to be ready to discuss at the meeting tomorrow and even possibly through City Commission. One of the benefits of the mixed use district is that not only does it encourage just that mixing of uses, where design becomes important. If you're going to allow uses to commingle, then the design of the development and how it relates to other properties and also how it relates to the public area, to the street, becomes very important. So can you talk a little bit, Brian, about because this building, because 640 sits back off of the sidewalk several feet, I don't know the exact distance. How do you plan on this? And I realize, if you're not able to get into extreme level of detail, then that's fine. But do want to be ready to have this conversation with the Planning Commission and with the City Commission about sidewalk improvements in the area. Realize that may need to be a conversation we have in partnership with the city or some other forum there. But what are some of your thoughts there about widening this hard space right in this area? What are some of your thoughts or responses to questions about hours of operation? Will hours of operation be different for the building or for the structure than the pump track? Will you be providing outdoor lighting for the track or for other areas? And then we can talk about parking here in a minute. But let's start first with kind of how you plan on the building tying in with the street, tying in with the pedestrian realm, and then also talk a little bit, if you could, about hours of operation and lighting on site.
Sure. Well, that little area between I guess first and foremost, the area between the sidewalk and our structure, it's not a great length. I wouldn't even think that it would be more than 15 feet. So I apologize, I haven't measured that, but it does have a little incline to it. So we're going to have to manipulate that to a certain degree and see what we can come up with, because one of my other aspects was to put garage doors down at the bottom, which I have a garage door on the existing structure there at 701, and it's just aesthetics primarily, but we do utilize it to get product in, leave it open, breezy areas. And one of the other things where that man door is there at the bottom, I was thinking doing a man door, but to the right of that where the twin window is, doing maybe a partial garage door. So I think maybe Italian ice or some type of frozen slushies or something would be an aspect to just a walk-up window. And so I'll just have to see what the elevations are. And I know I've got to be concerned about ADA compliance and being able to get a ramp or some form of a handicap accessible roll-up type ability to get from that ground level up to the deck that we'll have off on the side there. So yes, concern, meeting all the requirements that we have to each bullet point. Just going to take some manipulation to get that elevation proper. Sure. As far as parking goes, we do have locomotion there. We got a small footprint, as well as this structure. The new structure will have a relatively small footprint. Going back to what I said earlier, I think the majority of our traffic is going to be from off the Twitchy trails, whether it be cycling or pedestrians, runners coming over. Parking we do have there at our existing shop. I don't think on-street parking does facilitate that, but we do have the Twitchy Trail parking there as also. We will have 2 parking spaces up as you go up the driveway, which I think that's our max limit of that on side yard parking. But unfortunately, Preston, I don't have all the answers on that front elevation, but I know we can definitely address that. Sidewalks, I hope that crosswalk would be implemented there going across the street. We do have a sidewalk in front of us, but that sidewalk, it's in front of us, but it ends. Sure. Maybe that's a future discussion.
Yeah, and I think, and we certainly didn't expect you to have definitive decision or certainly weren't trying to pigeonhole you. Realize that there's still a lot of design left. Yes, but some of these things, we had talked about either preliminarily or they've come up through our plan review. And so how the pedestrian realm ties into the development is going to be very important. And I do think it's going to end up being a partnership of sorts. And I do agree with you that, does that involve new crosswalks? You've got a transit stop here at this intersection. And so I think that's an important element that we need to recognize, and not forget that we have a transit stop here. So are there ways to improve the area for that purpose as well? So I think there's a number of things we can discuss on how the pedestrian will be accessing the site. The other is, and I appreciate you touching on parking, but touch a little bit, if you could, on what your plans are. And again, realizing that this is very early, some of this could change, but we just like to be prepared for these conversations at the rezoning level. Talk a little bit, if you could, about hours of operation, what your plans are for lighting the site, lighting the pump track, things like that, just in case those get brought up.
Yes, sir. Hours of operation. This is something to a certain degree is going to coincide a little bit with what we do at the bike shop. To a certain degree, we're open. We're getting ready to change over to winter operating hours, 10 until 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and Sundays we're open 11 until 6. A little slower in the wintertime for outdoor activities, but we still do get our maintenance and sales and so forth. So our hours of operation here at the new property, I can't see anything going past 9 p.m. I just don't think that's going to be a crucial time or anything after that time. I just don't want to have an operation open. Primarily, I think the biggest activity we're going to get is going to be in the spring, summer, and fall time frames, and the time's going to change. But as far as lighting goes, for that pump track, yes, we will definitely light it up in a good way, maybe just down lighting instead of broadcast lighting. But yeah, we'll definitely want to put some lighting in there. And hours of operation, I can see, and I said probably coincide, but probably somewhere 12 to 9 in the summer months, and earlier throughout the winter months when it's right now 6:05 and it's dark outside. I just the activity level and the temperatures and the snow is just going to diminish that. So we'll be somewhat seasonal to a certain degree without shutting down. But still yet seasonal. We'll definitely address those hours, and they will more than likely change as the seasons change.
Sure.
If that helps.
Great. Whitney, is there anything that you wanted to add, or any other questions?
No, I guess the only thing I want to add is that just as far as like talking points is that both pedestrian and bike scale are really crucial to both Mr. Winston and kind of like what's going on in this area. So both of those things they coincide very well together. I think there are opportunities if you're going to regrade some of that hill to like work on I think the sidewalk right there, like the earth has taken it back. And maybe
right.
It's like, and I don't think that it necessarily needs a completely new sidewalk. But just some maintenance that would be easy to do when it's graded. And you're right, it does kind of just stop there after a little while.
Yes, yeah, it does definitely. That slope from the sidewalk back to the property is pretty steep, especially as you go up the existing so-called driveway. And but I've got to also think of how that I've got to miss that wall, and maybe I can eliminate part of that wall and bring that the approach up a little bit better. And yes, I definitely that's something there. And as far as I can see some bad spots in the sidewalk there, and we'll address those for people. It's not a trip hazard or fall hazard. And
I'm sure the city has some of that in their own public realm as part of the right of way. My comment was that in that zoning district, it has a minimum of a 5-foot width. And so there's already existing there. So it's when I think of partnership, I think of, well, I'm sure that the city would want to partner in that safety as well. And I think there will be some wonderful elevations with garage doors and things. I've seen wonderful things done with kind of bike shops and the way that architecture can be completely pedestrian in scale and just, energize that dilapidated building.
Yeah. My front elevation, it's not really on here. It's something. Let's see. I don't think. No, I did a rendering, but
I feel like I've seen one, but maybe I haven't.
Yeah, it is. I can go down to it. Keep going.
Yeah, it's a really cool rendering.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just. It's sort of what we have at the existing locomotion. The simulated covered front with some eyebrows. I call them eyebrows, and then some metal exteriors. I think our shop turned out pretty nice there at 701, and there we go. That's my rough drawing. I apologize, but that's some idea of maybe what that could be.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
okay, great. Wendy, I'm scrolling down here through his concept plan that he submitted.
I don't have anyone on the line.
Okay. How many viewers do we have right now other than Mr. Winston? One of them could be Matt.
Good old Matt.
How many viewers do you have?
I have 2. I'm sorry, I have 4. It went up to 4.
Okay, fantastic. All right, well, so with this conversation that we have just had regarding Brian's proposal, regarding what he's looking to do to improve the area, these 2 parcels, how that relates to the Tweetsy Trail, Whitney's really good comment about, generally we are looking at development, especially non-residential development, from how does it meet our codes from the vehicular realm in terms of minimum parking, ingress and egress and that kind of thing. But you made a really good point that the importance of the pedestrian and the cyclist in this development is as or more important than the vehicle ever will be. And so how that design works with the street, how that design works with existing facilities, how all of that ties together is going to be critical. So I think that was a very good point that you made. Wendy, if we could, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and will you put the number back on the screen, and out of those viewers, can we see if anybody wishes to call in and has any questions or wants to engage us in any conversation? We're happy to do it. Mr. Winston's on the phone. I'm sure he'd be happy to do it. So we'll give them just a few minutes here to call in if anybody wishes to call in. I will note that we mailed roughly 200 letters for this neighborhood meeting because of the 3 properties. The outer edges, the outer boundaries of these 3 properties grabbed quite a few. So the requirements for mailing for the neighborhood meeting was all properties within 200 feet of the boundaries of the rezoning area. And so again, you have 701 and then 640 and 700, and 700 reaches all the way to the top of the hill to Taylor's Ridge. And so the mail out for this neighborhood meeting, like I said, was roughly 200 letters. I've been away from the office But I did ask folks here in City Hall whether or not they have fielded any phone calls or emails since those letters went out. Our development coordinator, Will Ryder, indicated that he had received 2 phone calls, one of which he was able to engage that individual. One, he called back and left a message. But to my knowledge, out of all the letters that have been sent in preparation for this neighborhood meeting, I'm not aware of any one who has called or expressed opposition or even support at this point. So I don't know whether or not folks are just holding up for tomorrow, or if there's implied support. I don't know. So this is where we are engaging the public, those folks who received a letter, or maybe you didn't receive a letter and you just happen to be watching this and you might live in the area of the Tweetsie Trail or East Maple Street or near Cardinal Park, and you have an interest in this rezoning, feel free to call in.
Got one on the line.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Caller, can you identify yourself?
Hey, Wendy, it's Jamie Poblich. Hey, Wendy, it's Jamie Poblich.
Hey, Jamie, will you turn down your YouTube video and just talk to us directly through the phone?
Is it not turned down? I thought I turned it down. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's all right.
Hey, on the mixed use, has the city and the planning commission come up with a parking standard for that new zone?
Well, there is a parking standard already built into the MX1 right now. Yes. And I'd have to pull up the text amendment to see whether or not there's any proposed. I don't believe we're proposing any changes to that, but what it allows, the MX1 allows for the minimum parking to be shared outside of the initial development site. And so what that would allow on both public and private property, and it is, I say that specifically because it specifically says that in the ordinance, that properties within the MX1, if there's a need to disperse parking onto alternative sites, they can do that on the Tweetsie Trail parking lot, Mr. Winston's bike shop, and then even utilize on-street spaces to count.
Okay.
Now, one of the things, part of the question, one of the natural questions that comes from that is, well, is that going to create a parking condition or a parking problem on those alternate sites? The idea behind the MX1, specifically the neighborhood scale, the small scale mixed use, is that, and it goes back to the comment that Ms. Hodges made, and that is that your intent is to move away from vehicular focus and into a realm of pedestrian and bicycle focus. And so there is less emphasis on the automobile because in large part, your customer base and other folks who might be accessing the development, not everyone's going to be in a vehicle. So there's that component. The other is that the square footage of his facility of 640, 40 by 26, it only is going to require X number of spaces, and I don't know that off the top of my head right now. But the smaller the facility, the smaller the requirement for number of parking spaces. If we were talking about large scale development is going to be obviously a greater impact on alternative sites.
Well, that was my question was, I guess where I was trying to go with that was if he could offset that through bike rails, something to offset parking by using bike rails or any other kind of way to reduce that parking space requirement.
I want to say the parking requirement is very small in general because of the square footage, and I want to say it's like, I feel like I want to say the wrong math, like the wrong math. I want to say it's like 3 to 4 spaces.
It's correct.
And
Okay.
it might be like right under 3.
And you can
or
use
2
a
and a half.
joint.
Yeah. So
As long as we can use that joint. I wasn't sure if we have that joint clause in there or not. So
We do.
We do. And if you need to, I can quote you what it is in the current ordinance, and I don't think that that changes. But
no, yeah, you know, I just really think this is a nice vision, and I wanted to make sure we didn't hinder it in terms of if there were alternatives to, if they needed more space for that pump ramp or whatever it's called. But anyway, that answered my question. I appreciate your time.
Jamie, I think that one of the things with the parking, and we sort of looked at it a little bit, because if we can do the bike racks help offset some of the requirements. And then I think it was 3 to 4 parking spaces, and you get a reduction based on the number of racks towards that parking. So I think we're okay there. I'm hoping so, but I think we are.
And I'll
Very
verify, and I'll be ready to have that pulled up and ready to rock and roll tomorrow night, so that there's a clear answer on that.
Okay. And well, we'll talk about that later. But anyway, great concept. Appreciate your time, and you guys have a good night.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie.
See you. Bye.
Okay. Wendy, do we have anybody else on the call?
We do not.
Okay. All right. We've been just shy of an hour now. Brian, is there anything you wanted to add? Again, I'm glad Jamie called in. He happens to be one of the planning commissioners. And so that's exciting, because he's just going to be ready to go for tomorrow night. But that was an excellent question, and one that we will be prepared for with those are easy to answer. I just didn't want to be fumbling around here on the computer screen trying to do that right here, but I'll have that ready to go for tomorrow. Anything else you want to add? Or Whitney, is there anything you want to add? Otherwise, we can pick this conversation up tomorrow when the Planning Commission considers it.
I just want to say thank you both, Whitney and Preston, both of you, for helping with me through this, and we'll get our ducks in a row, and then we'll get some fine tuning on the designs, and be able to make this look very, very nice and be a nice addition.
Great. Anything you wanted to add, Whitney? Any other questions?
no, I don't think so. No.
Okay, good. All right. All right. Well, with that, anybody who's watching, we encourage you to watch tomorrow night, January 12th, starting at 6 p.m. The Regional Planning Commission will consider this rezoning. There will be a more formal presentation using the PowerPoint format and all that. But Planning Commission will consider this tomorrow. If they make a recommendation, it will move forward to the City Commission. And then there are 3 readings, meaning that there are 3 separate times, 3 separate meetings where the City Commission considers a rezoning before it can be approved. So you still have 2 opportunities for public comment. There will be 1 public comment session tomorrow at the Planning Commission, and then there will be a formal public hearing at the City Commission on second reading. Traditionally, it's always on second reading. Could be on third reading, but traditionally it's on second reading. So more opportunities for the public to engage and ask questions or share their thoughts or opinions. And we encourage anyone and everyone who lives in this area or has an interest in cycling and other outdoor activities to certainly be a part of the conversation. So if nothing else, we will see everyone tomorrow night virtually, again, by order of the governor's executive orders, tomorrow, 6 o'clock for the Regional Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you.